Africa, welcome back to Kicking Doors. Have you ever thought that investing in the stock market is beyond your abilities? Well, I used to think so too. As an entrepreneur, investing in the stock market is a great way to get some capital, especially when those doors standing in your way of funding are made of concrete. The show is about kicking doors. We kick down these doors. That's the reason why we brought in heavy hitter this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome CEO of Easy Equities, Mr. Charles Savage. Now, a lot of people are afraid of trading.
Yeah, I think it's a heritage problem. We didn't deal with it at education level. We didn't do it at university, and stockbrokers speak a language that none of us understand. And so we sort of disintermediated and overcomplicated and sophisticated the interface. And so everyone's intimidated, everyone. Yeah. 99% of South Africans don't own shares.
Interesting conversation we're having off air about your 17-year-old son, Tristan.
That's right.
That he actually started trading at 12.
Yeah, and it was an interesting story because here I had to convince a kid who was 12 years old who wanted an iPhone and swap it for investments. And the conversation was difficult because he was like, what's the investment going to be worth to me that can it replace the cell phone? And so what I took him on was a journey that said to him, how much is that cell phone going to be worth to you next year?
Yeah.
And he was like, come on, Dad, it's going to be worth nothing. I'm going to want the next iPhone.
Yeah.
So I said to him, well, what's that 10,000 Rand of value going to be worth next year? And he said, well, I don't know. So I said, well, let's just say it's worth 20% more. And he's a smart kid and he's got a calculator, so he worked out that it would be worth 12,000 Rand. And then I sent him away and I said, well, what happens if you invest that for 30 years? What will it be worth? And he went away and it took him a couple of minutes. He came back, he said, look, Dad, I think the calculator's broken. So I said to him, it's not broken. That's right. It's worth, tens of millions. And he said, so you're telling me if I swap a cell phone today and invest it for 30 years, it could be worth tens of millions? I said, yes. And so that's how the journey started. And since then, he's been swapping small things in his life, his birthday presents, Christmas gifts, all sorts of things, and buying investments. And he's now 17, and I can tell you before the age of 21, he would have saved enough money to afford himself a wealthy retirement. Now sure, he comes from an affluent background, but it's all relevant, it all has to start, and the key thing is it has to start early.
What about somebody like myself, comes from the township, who doesn't have, Charles for a father, getting into trading, especially from an early age, and some of our audience members here who've got kids? Yeah,
well that's exactly why we created Easy Equities. We wanted to make sure that no one was excluded from the platform and participating. So we wanted to make sure that someone who's got 10, 15, 100 Rand could start their investment journey and start to get educated and start to engage with investments. Because the sooner they do it, the better off they're going to be. I mean, Warren Buffett said the biggest investment mistake he ever made was not starting young enough. He was 11. So we wanted to make sure that we created a platform that allowed 12-year-old kids, no matter where they're from, to start buying shares on the JSE.
Very interesting. And what made you get into entrepreneurship?
I think you've got to get context before you start to be an entrepreneur. And context is one, informed by education, and then surround yourself with knowledgeable, clever people that are smarter than you. And then travel for me is hell of important because I think we get caught up in the South African opportunity or the South African demographic. We lose sight of the global opportunity. And I'm interested in the global opportunity, not just what's happening here in South Africa. And what travel taught me is that we're good enough to compete anywhere in the world.
What is the one thing that you would say to all of us here?
I think the key thing as South Africans is we're scared to fail.
Africans.
And I think that we have to embrace failure, because in embracing failure and learning from it, we're going to find our success. And I think everyone is too focused on trying to find that one success, where they should be focused on failing 10 times. And I promise you, if you go through that journey of failure, learning from it, you'll find your success. Rather than being focused on success, just focus on innovating, on trying new ideas. And if they fail, take those lessons and apply them in your next venture.
What is your company doing to embrace and encourage a culture of financial discipline and financial education in communities?
We're working with some schools already, and they're just piloting a curriculum that we can then roll out nationally into all schools. So we really want to start with junior school kids and to create a curriculum that's free, that's empowered online, and we use it to educate the teachers so that they then educate the students, and then we empower those students to go onto the platform and start investing for themselves at a really early age.
Is it important that on the curriculum should we include investment as part of the profits that they can actually be able to invest out of afterwards?
Great question, and it's the most important thing you can do. I mean, if you think about it, we work our whole lives to afford ourselves a safe retirement. But we only start worrying about it at the age of 40 or 45. It's crazy, man. We've got to be starting worrying about it at the age of 12. The minute we can operate a calculator, we should be learning about investments so that we can afford ourselves a safe retirement.
What I want to know is how much do you need to start to invest, and do you need a broker to invest?
You can start with as little as 10 Rand. So what we've done is ensured that every single South African can participate. There are no entry costs, there's no minimum charges, there's no account fees. All there is that for every 100 Rand you invest, 65 cents is the cost of that transaction. So if you've got 10 Rand to invest, you can invest your 10 Rand. If you've got 100 Rand to invest, you can buy 10 Rand of 10 companies or 1 Rand of 100 companies. And I want to share the story of a kid in Soweto. He's 18 years old. He's a client of ours. He's bought 1 Rand of every listed company on the JSE, and they're about 400. Now, we wanted to understand why. Why would you go and buy 1 Rand of every listed company? So we phoned him up and said, why have you bought 1 Rand? He said, I'm 18 years old and one day I want to work for those companies. He says, what a better way for me to understand what they do than to be invested in those companies. And so there's an example of someone with 400 Rand who's gone and bought 1 Rand of every listed company. And he's engaging, he's educating himself. And I can tell you now, when that kid, 20 years from now, that kid's going to look back and the experiences that were created and forged by buying and owning those shares are going to enrich his life.
Lovely. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles Savage. I'll tell you what, sir. If you want a national rollout, you want this entire continent to know about your product, specifically South Africa, I'm your guy. Africa, thank you very much for hanging out with us.